currency I have seen is so restricted to massage parlors and dog walkers that it's essentially...
Are dog walkers in the same vein as massagers?
Well, okay, and
you better correct that quick. For us animal lovers, you better quick it.
Aromatherapist.
There you go. He's now packaging.
I mean, my point is that a time bank is just one of 100 different complementary currencies. Mileage on airlines, that's a complementary currency. I mean, there are hundreds of them. So let's not...
Yeah. What I was interested in your experiences was how we go about. You've had legislative experiences and you've run for governor and so forth. Was how you go about
Where did
getting
you run for
legislation
governor?
like this passed.
I'm sorry.
Vermont.
Vermont. Okay.
Well, I can tell you in Vermont how it's done, and I suppose it can be similar in most states, with the exception of the town meeting, which many states do not have. In Vermont, the energy for something that you want the government to do can come from a town meeting. And so let's say there are 50 towns that decide that a state bank is a good idea, then somebody like me would create a network of energy that would put the word out and give a sample warning, it's called, so that every town would look at that, would read that warning that this was going to be discussed and voted on at town meeting. And if a town has 50 people, it has 50 people. If the town has 18,000 people, then the town meeting is certainly a different structure, but it gets voted on at the town meeting. And that would provide a certain amount of impetus for the legislature to write a bill and get it done that way. Now, another way is for an individual like me. This is how I wrote the bill prohibiting electronic voting in Vermont, which passed. It only takes one person, and hopefully that person has a network of people behind him or with him. And some legislator says, hey, that's a great bill. That's a great idea. I would like to sponsor that. So that's another way to do it. Another way would be if a politician had the brains to come up with a good idea like that on his or her own, and then get it into his or her committee. And then it gets kicked around in committee. They all have to get kicked around in committee once they get there. And whether it's a Senate committee or a House, it still has to get debated and kicked around, and witnesses have to come. Many times, as you know, a lobbyist will be the person who initiates a bill.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to actually draft the bill, or do you just...
Well, you would draft it in a preliminary way, and if a legislator liked it, the legislator would turn it over to what is called legislative council, and the legislative council will turn it into the correct form, which some people might call legalese, but I don't. That's a pejorative term that's kind of meaningless. The legislative council turns it into a format that will work, that will mean something, hopefully. I
wanted to stop for just a moment. I want to check in with Steve in the engineering room to see how much time we have left for this broadcast. Okay, very good. Jim, is there anything else? First of all, thank you so much for your input and for being present. We want to invite you to continue to stay on. We were going to make another call. And Doctor, are you still on? Dr. Khavari?
I'm there.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we're going to make one more call now to Michael. You want to try that, Steve?
Can I make one quick comment?
Sure.
About one other thing is what is called monetizing the commons. And you mentioned Montana. If you have oil, you monetize the oil. You turn the oil into money. If you don't have oil, you find something else to monetize. It might be trees. It might be a great supply of water. It might be human resources. But you can monetize anything, including the commons. You can monetize real estate. So if you want to go
when you say monetize, I'm sorry, Jim, I just want to make sure for the listeners. When you say you can monetize oil, we understand that on a conceptual basis, but when you say monetize, do you mean using that as a kind of collateral base in which to create money? What do you mean?
That is definitely one way that I mean it, yes, like gold. If you had a gold mine and the gold was readily available, you put a fence around it, and you say, this is ours, you monetize that.
So but you're talking about that creating credit. Is that what you mean by monetizing in the context we're speaking about? Because I want to zero in on what exactly you mean. And then we have to quickly go to Michael. Go ahead.
I actually mean a little more than that, but yes, I do mean that. I also mean you can just say, we have this, it's worth something, we're going to spend money into the system because behind that money is our gold mine.
Yeah, so it's functioning as a collateral base, so to speak, or it's functioning as money. Oil as money and land as money and whatever as money. Correct? Okay, very good. How are we?
And as long, I would add, as long as money comes into existence along with goods and services, it's not inflationary. So you can create money as a state or as a country or whatever, and as long as you can call it monetizing, or as long as there are goods and services to balance it, like right now, we actually have a shortage of money in the real economy. Although the Federal Reserve is madly printing money, they're giving it to the banks, and the banks are not lending it out to the people. So in Main Street, we have actually a severe shortage of money because there's a lot more things that we could monetize, as you say, than we've got the money for. So there's real estate that's not getting sold or, that's going into foreclosure. I'm just reading about students are lining up. They can't get into classes anymore to finish their degrees because they're cutting back on classes so much that they can't fill their requirements. I mean, we've got the students and we've got the teachers. So we can just monetize that whole situation where you've got services and you've got people who want the services. So you've got the thing which you can spend the money for, and so that's called monetizing.
So I want to touch one thing before we call Michael. And Steve in engineering, okay, so now I want to ask all of you who are here the following, but I want to start with Ellen, which is, I'm a lover of gold and silver, and I know it's like a parallel system almost, if you will. But there are so many people that are afraid in the context in which our reserve currency, the way it's being treated, and the way money is being just printed at the printing press, so many people are scared and very frightened right now and are running to gold and to silver to own it. They're also going to James Turk organization Gold Money. And I know that what you're proposing through Web of Debt by establishing a state-chartered bank and all over the country is a parallel opportunity. But could you speak to the people that are very attracted to metals, that are in it, that are scared to death of the currency devaluation and debauching? Could you speak to whatever it is you are moved to say about that, so at least we can address the people that are in that realm?
I think gold and silver are a wonderful investment, of course, and obviously because it's going up right now. And if you really did have a collapse of the currency, like happened in Argentina, where the national currency was worth nothing, people developed community currencies. That was one thing they did, just little paper receipts, and they traded things. And if they had some gold or silver coins around, I think actually silver is more practical than gold because it's small. If you went to the grocer, let's say every other form of currency had been wiped out, and you went to the grocer with your gold coin, and you'd say, no, really, this is worth $1,000. And the grocer wouldn't know what to do with it, and he wouldn't necessarily believe you. But if you took a silver coin, that had a reasonable value, like one of those old coins, you can get a big bucket of them. That's a more fungible, practical thing.
And describe what fungibility is to the public, please.
Well, you wouldn't have to make so much change for it, in other words.
Okay.
It could be a modest sum, $100 or something. I'm not sure what those old coins are worth now. But I don't think a gold and silver as a currency would work. In other words, for many reasons, I've
as a currency or as a form of money.
Well, you can use it to trade, just as a form of barter, but you don't need to stamp it with, and call it the national currency because there's not enough of it. Even in the 19th century, when we were on the gold standard, it was heavily supplemented, first with banknotes. In other words, there were 10 times as many banknotes issued as there was gold in the bank's vaults. That was the fractional reserve system, and that developed from the 17th century when the goldsmiths figured out that they could lend 10 times as many of these paper receipts as they had gold because people didn't want the gold. They didn't want to carry the gold around. They wanted to carry these little paper receipts around, so they wouldn't come for their gold. But as soon as they figured out that there wasn't enough gold to cover all the receipts, there would be a run on the bank. And they had runs on the banks in the 19th century like every 10 or 20 years. They had like serious depressions and farmers would lose their homes.
And runs on the bank are when everybody runs to their bank to get their money and there's nothing there.
Right. Most people don't get it because the gold's not there. Yeah, exactly. So there was that, the paper money that supplemented the gold. And there was something called the real bills doctrine, which is
Dr. Freke? Dr. what is his name? Anton?
Fekete, I think.
I can't pronounce
I don't know how to
properly.
pronounce it either, but it's Fekete.
Right.
But anyway,
he's brilliant.